Welcome to the Leading Owls podcast, brought to you by Rice University's Door Institute for New Leaders. Each week, we bring you inspiring stories and practical tips from successful student leaders, faculty, and staff, along with leadership experts and coaches that will help guide you in your own leadership journey. Today's guest is Bodie, one of Rice Business's top MBA students and the founding president of the Rice Business Management Association. Bodie's leadership journey has been about turning ideas into movements and classmates into collaborators. From leading a consulting team in Brazil that earned recognition in Forbes Brasil to building new platforms for future executives at Rice, he's learned how to balance vision with empathy and ambition with authenticity. Before Rice, Bodie served as a pastor, guiding communities through transformation. And he's also a Grammy-nominated singer, using music to connect and lead with presence. In today's episode, Bodie shares how building the Management Association from the ground up reshaped his understanding of influence, what it means to lead without authority, and how listening, not volume, creates true impact. Please welcome Bodie. Hi, Bodie. Welcome to Leading Owls.
Thanks so much for having me here.
Let's start with your leadership journey here at Rice. You've said it's been about turning ideas into movements and classmates into collaborations. What inspired you to start the Rice Business Management Association? And what did those first few weeks look like?
The idea sort of came to existence while we were on our global field experience in São Paulo. And just a group of us were gathered around a table. We were talking about our experience there, but we were also talking about what we felt like we were missing in our first year. And it was an opportunity to connect with executives and have opportunities to talk about real world leadership insights and have a chance to connect and build relationships and network. And so that conversation led to an idea to start an industry club at the Jones School. We decided to spend some time researching other business schools, other top tier business schools, to see if perhaps there was a club that had already been conceived in other spaces that hadn't come to fruition at Rice yet. And so we discovered there was a club called the Management Association that most of our other peers at other schools had, and no one had ever really decided to birth that idea here at Rice. And so one thing led to another, filled out some forms, chatted with some officials, and then it got off the ground this following semester.
That's so cool. That's neat that you were able to find a framework that already kind of fit what you were looking for.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of not reinventing the wheel.
Starting something new inside an established institution can be really tough, especially here at Rice. The Jones School was celebrating its 50 years. So was there a moment when you wondered if it would actually take off and how you could keep it going?
Not really. I'll be honest, perhaps it's naivete or it's just a bit of confidence. I don't know what it is, but I felt like it was something that would be just such a great fit for our culture and our mission. And I was delighted to discover that it was exactly what we needed at the time. So it took us 50 years to have a management association, but I expect that the next 50 years it will grow and do great things.
So you mentioned Sao Paulo for your global field experience. Can you tell us about that trip and what it was like guiding your team through a real world consulting project that ended up being featured in Forbes Brasil?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll say, first of all, it's a bit of a tall order to have a team of MBA peers work together and for them to appoint a project manager for that team, especially one who did not have a former background in engineering or in business. I came from a nonprofit space. I was formerly a pastor in church ministry. And so I had lots of great nonprofit management experience, but I wasn't sure what I was doing with a bunch of engineers and accountants and finance people. But we pulled together, we worked together through the course of that first year. They acknowledged my leadership to be able to manage cross-functional teams. And that's what we were on this trip. And so working cross-culturally as well with this really great multinational company, a marketing agency in São Paulo was so cool. I got to have some Zoom calls with them to discover what it was that they identified as their problem. We got a chance to kind of spend some time with that and working on a solution. That's what consultants do. And that's what we were trained to do in our first year. We applied those first year learnings to this problem, came up with our solution, brought it down to São Paulo, and we were met with a lot of positivity, some celebrated solutions that we offered on those PowerPoints. It was a really cool experience. I was especially honored whenever I recognized that it wasn't just a few of the company's leaders that were in the room, but actually some of their significant investors. And so that was a bit of a unexpected surprise, but I'm glad that we brought our A game and we represented Rice well.
Wow. What did that experience teach you about leading across cultures or managing a team when the environment expectations are completely different?
Yeah, so I'll tell you, this was the first time that this company had worked with Rice University. And typically, our teams are set up with companies that have worked with the Jones School over the course of years. And so our marketing firm that we worked with confessed to us after the presentation that they weren't certain if we were actually real. that They had received phone calls, and they had set up all of the logistics, all the particulars, details had been set, but they weren't quite sure that this was, it sounded a little too good to be true. A team of top tier MBAs want to come and do a no cost consulting project for your company. I mean, that's typically $100,000 or $200,000 worth of an investment.
Yeah.
They didn't believe it. And then we came in to their office the beginning of that week. They were delighted to meet us, but they still weren't sure if we were genuine until the day that we gave our presentation and we knocked their socks off, is what they said. And so working across cultures, what we discovered was there was some trust that had to be built. And part of what we had learned about the Brazilian culture is everything is very, very much relationship based. Spending time in the office rather than on video conference. We had to be there in person, speaking to them, connecting with them, shaking their hands, and eventually going to grab drinks and food with them and connecting with them outside of the office. That's whenever we were able to sort of cross that cultural barrier and make inroads with them and then ultimately delivering on what we promised to offer. Yeah.
That's just an incredible experience. And this was all part of your MBA experience. Wow.
It was. I think it's the best part of the MBA is the global field experience.
You've said that leadership isn't about being the loudest voice in the room, but about creating space for others to find theirs. Can you share a story from your time at Rice when you really saw that philosophy in action?
I guess that is me bringing a bit of my church ministry experience into the business space. I learned early on as a minister that folks aren't eager to listen to your sermons until they have been heard themselves. They don't really care what you have to say until they know that you care. I know that seems sort of trite, but it's true. And so I think part of leadership in the business space is being sure to listen and listen to your colleagues and raise your colleagues up alongside you whenever you're in the process of leadership. And at Rice, I found that to be true in our study rooms whenever our teams are getting together and working through the nitty-gritty of our projects, as well as whenever we're making presentations with the slides behind us on the wall, making sure not to step on each other whenever it's time for another one to step up to the plate and to shine. So making space for everyone to be heard is so important, especially whenever you think you might have the answer and a question is being hurled at you at the end of the presentation. It's important to give everyone a place to show their area of expertise and to let everyone shine in that moment.
I think that's an incredible skill to have when you come into Rice. Rice is a very high achieving environment, both undergrad and MBA program and graduate school. And when you have those high achieving programs, sometimes listening does get lost because so many people are bringing so many incredible ideas. We actually have a workshop called active listening, which a lot of students are like, I think I'm a great listener. And then they'll go to this workshop and they'll be like, I was a terrible listener. I had no idea. So in your day-to-day time during your MBA program, what can you do to enhance that active listening and to make sure that everyone's ideas are getting heard?
So what I love about grad school is that it's as much about hearing from the experts as it is about hearing from our peers. And there's truth and insights that are being shared from both the podium and from the desk. And so it's important to know when to be listening and listening to your colleagues and hearing their insights, as well as when to speak up. So you can't also just hide in the corner. There's moments whenever your contribution is important and valuable and vital. Many of us who come to the MBA come with years of experience in the professional space. And so there are insights that we bring to that space that are new. And that's part of the learning adventure is being able to synthesize everyone's experience, glean from those perspectives more than just what we would read from a textbook.
Now, you mentioned before you came to Rice, you led in a very different setting, a church ministry. How did that experience shape the way you lead teams and build trust today?
I came to business school as a pastor, and I'm currently on academic sabbatical, as we call it, to pursue this degree. And so I'm not currently working in the church, but spent many years doing that. Spent many years directing the choir, as well as preaching sermons and visiting folks in the hospital and working in food pantries and all those sorts of things. And typically people do the opposite. They go to business school, have a corporate job, and then they decide to redeem their soul and go to work in the church. I say that sort of jokingly because I don't plan to lose my soul in the corporate world. But that said,
Very good.
I think I come to this space as a business leader, a prospective business leader, with a sense of empathy. I have learned to listen to other people's stories, to connect with people across barriers, to build relationships with folks that are very much not like me and others that are perhaps a part of my tribe and everyone in between. And I think it's so important that we keep an empathetic ear whenever we are building relationships and connections and listening to one another and finding value, seeking to listen before we cast judgment and seeking to build bridges rather than tear them down.
Now, as a minister, you really help a lot of people through moments of celebration and crisis in their lives. Are there any lessons from that have surprised you and how relevant they are to business leadership?
So guiding folks through challenges as well as moments of celebration, I'm thinking the most extreme of those examples would perhaps be a celebration of life or a funeral, a memorial service, or the most exciting could perhaps be the baptism of a child or a wedding. I'm thinking patience, because folks are sometimes at their best or their worst in those kinds of moments. And I think in the business setting, we're also called upon to have a great deal of patience when we're working with different stakeholders in different settings. Gosh, I'm just thinking about how emotions can run really high whenever the stakes are also high. And in business settings, I'm about to start a class this weekend called Breakthrough Negotiations, where we will apply some academic frameworks to making deals. And I think those are some key lessons I'm learning at Rice that are going to help me beyond the MBA. And I think in that class, I'm going to have a lot to say about my experience in exercising patience.
That is definitely true. Patience is not something that everybody has. It's definitely a skill that you have to work on. So now on to one of the coolest things is that you're also a Grammy-nominated singer who's performed across North America, Europe, which is so incredible. So how has music influenced your approach to leadership?
That's where I learned how to be a part of a team, I think. Singing with other incredible vocalists. That was certainly the space where I learned what it meant to be a little bit louder when I needed to be, and a little bit softer when I needed to be, blend a little bit when I needed to, make sure I have a bit of nuance with whatever language it is that we are performing in. That was certainly the place I learned the importance of teamwork and collaboration. I think I worked a bit on my patience too, because if you've ever been a part of a musical ensemble, you know what it means when the conductor has you to go back and do it again. And the conductor says, let's stop, let's take that with a little bit more intention. So, I had some exciting moments working with a group called Conspirari that's based in Austin. We did a really cool recording that was nominated for a Grammy that I got to appear on. And I am so grateful that experience taught me so many valuable lessons that I've taken with me into the nonprofit space as a church leader in management and church administration, and then further into my career as someone who will be leading in the corporate space.
That's so incredible. And it's interesting all the leadership lessons you can learn in that realm, which I have not, because I cannot sing a lick.
Oh, I bet you're a lot better than you think you can sing. Yeah, I have never. I also sometimes have taught voice lessons in my past life. I bet you would be an amazing voice student.
All right. Well, I have to take a lesson from you and I'll make you regret it. So you mentioned performing in other languages. How many languages have you performed in? I mean, ballpark.
Oh gosh. Wow. Yeah. So many people think that you have to learn how to actually understand and speak those languages. And that while that's great, it's sort of be impossible to do that. So in my undergrad in music, we took some diction classes. We learned German and Italian and French, but in Latin. And but then you go on to, in your professional career, expand that. I've sung in Hebrew. I've sung in Russian. I have sung in Swahili.
Wow.
The list goes on. You just kind of take the language and you kind of parse it into pieces and learn how to pronounce it. You write into your score what the words mean, so you can try to emulate on your face the emotion of what you're saying. But the best of the best learn those languages by heart. But I did that for a season and decided to move on, and I'm grateful for that experience. But I do have colleagues that I would call the best of the best that do it all. So, yeah.
So looking back at your time at Rice so far, what's a moment that stands out as one where you felt your leadership really made an impact?
I have about a year and a half a semester. I think if I were to have been a guest on your podcast 10 years from now, I would have a beautiful answer for you. That said, if I'm looking back, I think it's moments whenever my past life as a minister, I mean, still currently considered a minister on the books, even though I'm not really practicing. I think it's whenever those moments have like intersected with business. Whenever I had a colleague that had a rough interview, came up to me and said, Bodie, like, this was really rough. And I know you understand what it means to go through a rough interview as a fellow MBA student. And you know what it means to be a minister. And I could really use a hug right now. I think it's moments like that that are particularly meaningful when I see the intersection of two worlds kind of collide. I think also in the classroom as I'm learning the ethics of business, and whenever the past informs what I'm doing in the present, I think that's a really special experience, being able to speak from a time and a place where I really cared a lot about those things in a former career, and still care about those things as I move forward toward a future in corporate leadership.
That's so beautiful. I love that. For students who want to start something new, like you did, a club, a program, or a movement, what advice would you give for them to take the next step or the first step?
First of all, share your idea with some colleagues, get some feedback, pressure test your initial thoughts, and have the boldness to do that. Trust in your excitement about a new concept, and then share it with your close friends that will give honest feedback. And then from there, what I did, it was important to me for our context in the business school that I bring something that wasn't just completely outside of the box, but was also tried and true in other spaces, that we compare ourselves by other metrics. For me, it was important that it compare, that there be some measure of benchmark. And so bringing those benchmarks to bear, I think, was very helpful in getting buy-in from our executive leaders and officials in the business school to greenlight the opportunity for us to grow. And then I'd say, like, thirdly, be a cheerleader and don't be afraid to market your own idea with gusto, to get on your cohort's WhatsApp chat and to sound the alarm and tell everybody how exciting it is that this new thing is happening, and spread the word. In doing that, I found the Pied Piper, I would call her, of our class of MBAs, and I recruited her to the board, and she became the spokesperson for our club, which is, I think, why we gained 30 members within a period of about an hour, I think, after the message was sent out. So I think it's important whenever you're marketing to know who it is that can really sell an idea. You can sell an idea yourself because you have the passion, but there's also certain folks that have the temperament and the skill set and the buy-in already from the community that you can also leverage in that process. And I was grateful to get Emma's input. Shout out to Emma.
I think Emma was one of our grad ambassadors.
It's quite possible. Yeah, Emma's amazing, and I'm grateful that Emma is my vice president in this club.
That's so great. Yes, there's always influencers within every group. So get their buy-in and get them to get others there. That's really, really great. That's a great way to get members. So finally, you did participate in the DOOR one-on-one activation coaching. How did that help you deepen your approach or see your leadership differently?
Yeah, what I love about coaching is, unlike therapy that focuses on the past and tries to find a sense of healing, coaching is about finding something in your professional life or in your leadership skill set and sharpening it for the future and where you're going, where you're headed. I found that in those spaces, those hours that we had together with my incredible coach, I had a chance to kind of work on some things that I saw sort of rising in the classroom and different projects that I knew would be, thorns in my side, to use some theological language there, going forward in my corporate leadership. And I suppose I've always had them. I didn't recognize until I had a minute to stop and focus. And so working with that coach just was such a gift to both my Rice experience as well as what I'm going to take away from my time here in the MBA.
That's awesome. That's incredible to hear. Well, now it's time for our rapid fire questions. What's one leadership book, podcast, or quote that you keep coming back to?
7 Habits for Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey.
If your leadership style were a song, what would it be? Sorry, if you need more time to prepare, we can skip that question. That's a hard one. You're going to have to think about that one.
Oh, geez. No, just the song that came to mind, I don't know that was very well prepared. It's like, I was saying, can you feel the love tonight? I don't know why that came to mind, but that's exactly what came to mind. Okay.
I think that really matches with your leadership style because you seem very warm and you are a good listener and you have that ministry background. So I think that would match.
Yeah. Well, okay. If you can edit that answer in a beautiful way, then we'll take it. We'll keep it, rather. Yeah.
What is your favorite spot on the Rice campus?
Favorite spot on the Rice campus? Terrell Sky Space.
I have never gotten that. I love that. If you could lead any fictional team for one day, who would it be and why?
Oh, gosh. Fictional team.
The Avengers, the Fellowship of the Ring.
Gosh, this is really going to make me look like a dork. I'm a Star Trek fan, so I would have to say the crew of the Voyager.
That's a great answer. Well, then, since you're a Star Trek fan, I have to ask Kirk or Picard.
Oh, Kirk or Picard. They're both great. But yeah, Kirk for sure.
It's a classic. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. He's the best CEO.
Although I do like Patrick Stewart. That is a tough question.
Oh yeah, he's working the accent, and I feel like I might be bald one day. So I will whenever I'm bald, I'll say that. I'll say Patrick Stewart. For now, I'm a William Shatner dude. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your Rice leadership journey. As you look ahead to graduation and beyond, how do you hope to carry the things you've learned into your next chapter?
At Rice, we've been given such a great, it's like all the skills that we need to be successful in this next chapter of life and to up our game and to take it to the next level. And so my aim is to employ those in a way that really bring value to the next team that I get to serve and be a part of, and also to reflect well on the Rice brand. I feel so fortunate to be a part of the Rice family. We're among really a hall of heroes, a legacy of some incredible minds and some incredible, inspiring leaders. And I hope to just add to that incredible legacy moving forward.
It is a really wonderful and special place. Bodie, thank you so much for joining us on the Leading Owls podcast. Your story really shows how leadership can blend empathy and creativity and action, and how much impact one person's vision can have on a whole community.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us for the Leading Owls podcast. We will be back next week with more leadership journeys and tips to share. New episodes release each Wednesday. For more information on the DOOR Institute for New Leaders and our free leader development programs for Rice students, please visit door.rice.edu.